I just had this idea of like a kind of female superhero character that I would want to write. And then that kind of morphed into this idea of taking the two ways that society is messed up about women, like Madonna and whore, this Madonna whore complex thing. And what if I made a character who was both Madonna and whore, who was like an excellent mother and morally good and also an extremely good sex worker?
The novel Margo's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe came out in 2024, but to me, it was the summer of 2025 book. Suddenly, everyone I knew seemed to be reading this book, which is about Margo, a 19-year-old college student who has an affair with her married English professor and becomes pregnant. And then she becomes a single, broke young mom who turns to OnlyFans to make ends meet. This all might sound very serious, and it is, but it's also a hilarious and really wrenching book about motherhood, wrestling, substance abuse, sex work, and most surprisingly of all, the Orange County city of Fullerton. Earlier this year, the Apple TV series based on the book wrapped production with a cast that includes Elle Fanning, Nicole Kidman, Nick Offerman, and Michelle Pfeiffer. It's set to come out in 2026. Rufi Thorpe, welcome to LAist.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the titular character of Margo turns to OnlyFans to make ends meet. And I heard that you did quite a bit of research into the world of adult online content to make sure the details were correct. Can you tell me about that process? Yeah, what was your research into OnlyFans like?
Well, okay, so first I have to say, I think novelists in general are pretty spoiled with research because normally people are desperate to tell you about their job, you know, because like nobody asks people about their jobs. So I've gotten defense attorneys to talk to me on the phone for free for hours. I've gotten, you know, and this was not one of those situations because
it was like really hard to get people to talk about it.
Really hard to get people to talk. Really hard because I didn't already have the connections of anybody in that world. Mm-hmm. So I'm approaching strangers. At first I was like, oh, I'll just DM them on Instagram. Guess how many people are trying to DM them on Instagram, right? They're not reading their DMs on Instagram. Yeah. So the way that I went about it was I created an OnlyFans account and I would write to accounts that were small enough that I thought that they were probably still reading their mail, and I would send a $50 tip and I would say, I'm a novelist, I'm writing this book, I really want to portray sex work as work. The book has no moral agenda. I really care about getting this right and I can't get it right without doing the research. Will you please help me?
Yeah.
And so a fair number of people were willing to help me. It was a lot easier to get people to talk about technical details, like, you know, how the back end of the system worked, or, you know, what did most men use as their user profile names, things like that.
Yeah.
It was a lot harder to get people to talk about even emotional questions that I considered pretty open-ended, like how have your feelings about this work changed from the time you started doing it to now?
They would have a hard time answering it?
Well, they just were very clear that that was their personal life and their personal life was not for sale. You know, you have to have extraordinary boundaries to do sex work. And I was a paying customer, right?
Right.
I think I got really lucky in that, and also their idea of how much they wanted to be paid to answer these questions was like incommensurate with my ability to continue paying them, right? So like, because what I really wanted was for someone to read the full manuscript. And they were like, what about $500 per page I read? And I'm like, I don't have that kind of money.
I mean, yeah, the hustle is real. Yeah.
Yeah, but not that your time isn't worth that. Like, I'm sure that that is a fair assessment of the worth of your time. It's just, I don't have it. But then an angel took pity on me, in part because she used to work in publishing before she started making too much money on OnlyFans.
Incredible.
And she read the whole manuscript and gave me really invaluable feedback. So it was definitely, honestly, too fun research to do because it was the pandemic when I was writing it. I was supervising Zoom kindergarten, and honestly, like having OnlyFans open on a tab on my browser as I supervised Zoom kindergarten made me feel like less trapped in mommyhood.
Yeah,
you know? Like it was a way of sort of like being, I don't know, still connected to the world, I guess.
That's really interesting. I actually, when I was reading the book, I was curious because there's so much technical stuff. It actually reminded me, I don't know if you've seen the horror film Cam.
I haven't.
It was written by an actual cam girl, and I had heard interviews with her, and she had talked about like how important it was to her to like show the scheduling process of like how she planned each night because it was like themed. And that sort of same like fun element of like really understanding the work part, but also like the creative work part of sex work really came through in the book. And I was like, oh, it feels like, yeah, like you could tell there was like a lot of knowledge about like the like daily structure of how it works in the book.
Well, I think if anything, the funnest part about getting to write novels is doing all that research. And I think I just am nosy and curious and interested. And I'm like, so then what do you do? And then what happens? You know, I could kind of get interested in anything like that. And I loved getting to imagine how she would actually do it and kind of understanding the way that you have to build a persona to present yourself in public space. And weirdly, like the wrestling really helped me provide like a structure for talking about that in the book.
Yeah, so for people who have not read the book, she really finds herself as an OnlyFans worker through her dad, who is a wrestler who had to create his own persona, and that makes their relationship stronger, and also like informs her like business life, which I thought was like it was so cool seeing those things together, and made so much sense when you saw them. But I would have like never put that together without.
I mean, it was the way that it came to be written was really coincidental. I'd had this idea of wanting to write a sex work motherhood novel for a long time. And then I realized that OnlyFans was just getting so much less cultural stigma and pushback than other forms of sex work that I was like, if I ever was going to do it, OnlyFans would be the way. And OnlyFans is blowing up in the pandemic. So I was like trying to write it, and I was trying to figure out Margo as a character. And simultaneously, I fell in love with wrestling. And it was kind of pure coincidence, but it was sort of like, I was like, these two things are a lot alike. I wonder what'll happen if I put them next to each other.
Okay. But also, like, what drew you to sex work and motherhood together?
It's so stupid. I went and saw Wonder Woman in theaters with my mom. And
which one?
The first one, the like Gal Gadot.
Okay.
Like, and we loved the whole like island of the Amazons and everything, but we both were kind of just like a little unmoved by Wonder Woman herself. And we're like, why does she got to be so like cold and virginal? You know, like what is it with female superheroes and sex? Like they're never allowed to just have healthy sex lives. Like even Black Widow, right? She's sexy, but she's all tortured about her sexuality, kind of. And it's like, why can't, and like, you know, similarly, Captain Marvel's weirdly asexual. Like, why
all
can't...
of those Marvel people, right, don't have sex.
Yeah, it's
the people,
weird.
The heroes, yeah.
You know, but like, I mean, you don't get to see Thor having sex really, but it's very clear he probably does, and it's fine for him. You know?
I guess I hadn't thought about it, but yeah.
So I just was like, why can't there be a female superhero who fucks? And I was like, I wonder if I could write one someday. Like, and I just had this idea of like a kind of female superhero character that I would want to write. And then that kind of morphed into this idea of taking the two ways that society is messed up about women, like Madonna and horror, this Madonna horror complex thing. And what if I made a character who was both Madonna and whore, who was like an excellent mother and morally good, and also an extremely good sex worker? You know, like what if would she explode? Could such a character be created? And this was just an idea in the back of my head for like 10 years.
Wow.
And so, but I was just like, because especially in America, I feel like we put mothers on such a pedestal. We're really interested in prosecuting mothers, like, you know, arresting mothers because they let their kids stay in the car while they ran into Rite Aid or whatever, and judging mothers and the right kind of motherhood. And then the stigma against sex work is also so strong in our culture. And so I was like, I'll never be able to do it. I'll never be able to get a reader to sign off. And then when there was less pushback against OnlyFans, I think in part because it was all digital. And, you know, I mean, for our generation, like everyone's taken nudes for a partner. But the idea of doing it, you know, it can appeal to a broader swath of women than the idea of, you know, it's anxiety producing to think about going and auditioning at a strip club. You have to learn a dance. You have to have the clothes. You have to interact with strangers. You don't know if you can do it. It's scary.
Yeah.
Whereas the idea of OnlyFans, I think, is a little bit less scary to think about trying to do. And then, like, you know, even my Mormon mother-in-law is like, how much are they making? Just the sheer amount of money that some outliers are making is enough to make people less judgmental about it than...
Well, there's also the issue of like control, right? Where it's like if you're the one, because I'm like that makes me think of like I watched all of the The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I don't know if you've watched that show.
I have not actually. I mean, I'm very aware of it, but I have not watched the whole thing.
Yeah, but it's actually, I mean, it's like Mormon girls who are based, like, they're not actual sex workers, but so much of it is based on them doing sexy dances, but in their living room. And like the show is so much about their sexual mores. It's very interesting. I recommend that show. I think it's really good. But yeah, it's like, I think it's because like they have control over what they're showing in their own home, that I think it's like more allowed in that very conservative space.
And in a way, I felt like OnlyFans was a really positive development in the sense that you're putting the means of production in the hands of the artists. They get to make the content, they get to choose the content, which is not to say that it hasn't evolved, that some girls are being taken advantage of or forced to make content or in with shady managers, all that still exists. But in general, you have the power to decide exactly what you do, how you show, how you're going to present yourself, who you'll work with. And that seemed like, and you get more of the profit, you know? And that seemed like a really positive thing. And also, I kind of feel like the sheer scale of the thing, like once there's that many thousands of OnlyFans models, like how are you going to say somebody should never be hireable again because they used to have an OnlyFans account? Yeah. And maybe that will ultimately lead to a shift in cultural stigma for sex work as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, I finished the book and like and I was trying to describe it to a friend, and I was like, the book has a really refreshing moral compass. That's like what I thought, where I was like, because there were parts of the book I struggled with where I was like, maybe Margo shouldn't have custody of her kid. I was like, this, because like if I went to someone's house and I saw needles and that they're on OnlyFans, like, yeah, I'd be like, based on the facts on the page, I'd probably be like, I don't know if this person is fit to be a mom. But then the characters were so complex. You really understood their thinking. And it made me, when you were writing it, were you like thinking at all about those taboos, or were you like...
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think what I like to write about is things I'm not sure about. And then I try and talk myself in both directions. So I take something that I genuinely don't know the answer to, and then really try and make it as hard for myself as possible to decide what I think.
The Madonna, but sex worker is really hard even in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that I was trying to make it as hard as possible to decide what you think about it, because that's what's interesting. It's like, well, what is being a good mother? Like, and what is, like, how do you take care of a family member with addiction issues? How, is the right answer to just kick Jinx out and cut him out of her life? Or, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I think that's why we struggle with it so much. And then I think also, just as a writer, characters are the whole thing that I'm interested in, is people. And I think that one of my sort of abiding recurrent preoccupations is my own inability to morally judge people adequately. It would be so easy if people were either good or bad, but they hardly ever are. Yeah. They're always in the middle. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I write at all.
That's so interesting. I struggle with that as a journalist often. I find it really hard to interview someone. Like, I feel like sometimes people want in interviews for you to be really judgmental and take someone down. Like those clips go viral all the time.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I just, if I'm sitting in front of somebody and I'm hearing their story and they're being vulnerable with me, it's like I'm not, who am I to be their
there's a human element too, where right now we're in a really artificial situation, right?
In this very moment.
Yeah. But we're having a conversation, which is also a deeply natural thing. But there's these certain artificial constraints. For instance, it would be really weird if I started asking you intense probing questions about your work. Like there's this, that we've agreed that right now you're interviewing me and that there's a certain scope and rules around what that means. Yeah. And yet there is this like natural human element where we're also just like two human animals like having a conversation, and however your personal approach is towards other people, and like to be kind to them in a moment where they have forgotten what they were saying, or to extend empathy to the story that you're telling, to try and see it from their point of view. Like those human instincts are still there, even in the artificial construct of an interview. Yeah. I think I would make an exceptionally bad interviewer.
I don't know. I'm already feeling like you'd be good.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be good at doing a takedown of someone. I'm not good at being confrontational in immediate social situation.
Yeah, and it's weird because then it's like, yeah, it's like, what is the point of the where are you trying to go with this? And anyway, yeah. So, but I thought all those things about perspective in the book are really interesting about like who is she performing for, who's benefiting. Like I thought that they were like really delicately handled and like made me think a lot, which I appreciated. You talked about this question of what is a good mother. I'm about to have my first kid.
Oh, it's your first?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
And I read that you grew up with your mom and your grandmother in like a very like women forward household. And that part of the reason you got into wrestling is because you have 2 sons. And yeah.
I do. And my husband was trying to get them to fall in love with wrestling, and it just didn't work. Only I fell in love with it.
That's funny.
And I just fell head over heels in love with it. I think because honestly, I was such a fan of drag. And so when I first saw pro wrestling, I was like, oh, it's like we're dressing up in weird outfits and like insulting each other. I love it. You know what I mean? Tell me more about it. Who's this guy? And like there's just this aesthetic to wrestling that I find very intoxicating, which is that it seems like a school project that's gotten out of control. Like just too many people have added. So like nothing matches aesthetically. So you have like one guy and he's like, I'm the Undertaker, and my guy is like, you know, Paul Bearer, and I've got a magic urn. And then another guy's like, I have a sock puppet. And then another guy's like, I'm an American hero. And like none of it matches.
Yeah.
And it has this like real outsider art, like campy feeling to it that I find really intoxicating.
It is really sweet. I've only been to see wrestling that wasn't like lucha libre once, and it was like an amateur wrestling match in deep Brooklyn, and it was like a high schooler who was like doing his first time, and his friends were like losing their minds. And it was so, I remember being like, wow, I had no idea it'd be so fun, and like, yeah, and like kind of like crafty, like after schooly, but in a way that's like so endearing.
It really is. And because I feel like, I don't know, there's also, it is hard to put into words for people who haven't been to a wrestling show how involved the audience is, and how like there's all these rituals and taglines. It's like Rocky Horror.
Yeah.
Where there's like, this happens, and then the crowd chants this. Or if the crowd chants this, then the performers have to respond in some way. And that it is a really special art form in that way.
Totally. But I wanted to know about, like, what's most surprised you about being now in like more of like a boys' household?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, I think it was, because I didn't know my dad at all growing up. I was first getting to know men by dating them. And so raising them and getting to see them as little boys was really interesting, because I was like, in some ways they're exactly like girls. They're so human, you know, and everything.
And before they weren't human, like before you were like,
they weren't entirely human to me. I was only interacting with like adult men, you know. I'd never seen them in their pupil stages. And in some ways they're just like, I look at the daughters of friends, and the daughters will just sit there and color for like an hour or like do a sticker book, and I'm like, God, what must that be like?
I'm having a boy, so I'm like,
well, you know, it's kind of like I think all mothers figure out that there's certain ages that you're good at and gifted at, and certain ages that are hard for you. And the thing is that they just keep growing up. They just keep changing. And every day it's new. And if you're finding a particular phase challenging, just about the time you think you can't take it anymore, they change. And so it is the most bittersweet part of it, because you lose them, you know, and you start telling them stories about like precious things that you used to do together when they were little, and they don't remember them, and they're annoyed that you're telling them. You're like, we used to go on moon walks, and we'd say, where are you, moon? Hello, moon. Aww. And they're like, shut up, you know, like you're embarrassing me in front of my friend. They don't say shut up, but they look at me like, please stop.
Damn. How old are your sons now?
13 and 10.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask any tips, but one of them would be, no, it's a phase, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that you just you just try and be well-meaning. And I think, okay, so with my first child, he was so good. He was such a good boy. And I was certain it was because I was a good mother. And then my second one was a biter. And I learned that they just kind of are the way that they are. And you know, you do your best by them, but like if they are having problems, it is not because you did anything wrong. And if they are good, it is not because you did something right. Like the best you can really do is like try and love them, admit when you're wrong, like ask other people for advice. I don't know. Everyone's muddling through. And I think there's a lot of weird judgment in the baby era among like first time moms and the baby, and everything is right or wrong. And, oh, did you let them cry it out? That's horrible and cruel. Or people who don't do cry it out are ridiculous and namby-pamby. And do you breastfeed or do you bottle feed? And then by the time your kids are 8, you're like, yeah, no, you're just trying to survive. And whatever is best for you is the right thing.
Yeah.
And there's a million ways to do it. And guess what? The kids all grow up fine.
Why did you decide to have Margo be so young, like a young mom, and not slightly older?
Well, I needed her to be naive, and I wanted her to be so radically naive that it's almost a superpower. And there is a stupidity that is noble that you have when you're young. And you're like, well, I'm just going to try, you know? And like, even if everything's stacked against me, I guess I'm just going to do it anyway. And then also, I think that I was interested. I wanted her to, I didn't want to wind up writing a full, if I made her have much more of college, she would be too worldly to make the decisions that she made. Part of it is that she doesn't have very effective models for how she could actually make a life and build one. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have an idea of what she's supposed to do next. And I kind of needed her to, if she had successfully done like 3 years in a college and was a little bit older, I think she would have made different choices.
There's also, so her father struggles with addiction, and you alluded to this earlier, that it's like, how do you deal with a family member that has addiction? And I was curious why that was a subject you wanted to tackle.
Well, I think that if the opioid epidemic has taught us anything, I think that there was a lot of fear in the 90s about drugs. And there were a lot of in the news, and there was the crack and crack babies, and it was all made as though it was happening far away to bad people who were choosing to kind of do this. And I think, with the opioid epidemic, it's like, no, your aunt is addicted to her pills now, and we have to figure out what to do with her. And it is that you can't do that othering where you say, like, oh, this is evil.
Especially in white families. And
yeah, no, in white families. But, also just with it not being, I think we are used to stereotypes of young people getting into drugs, or people whose life is otherwise, tragic or ruined in some way. And I think that it's much more interesting you can't simply dismiss it as like, oh, these people have done this to themselves, when it is near to you. Right. And I think that the opioid epidemic, because it was kind of affecting people at all levels of society, wound up being something that was not far but near, and that you can't make those same kind of distancing moral judgments about.
Was there anything that happened for you personally that made you want to tackle that subject?
Well, I definitely struggled with drug use in my 20s, and found it to be really not as black and white as anyone had presented it to me. Either in terms of I guess, I don't know, in DARE they made it seem like you were addicted or not addicted, right. And it was this concrete state that you could point to. And I think anyone that has used hard drugs is like, yeah, well, obviously when you stop, you're going to have 4 days where you're shitting your guts out. And and then that's how you get to where you can go to your shift on Tuesday. Is sometimes you gotta buy yourself a bunch of Imodium AD and some Snickers and just go through till you can make that waitressing shift. So I think that I was interested on a personal level in writing it in a more intimate way that was familiar to me.
What do you feel like changed your relationship to drugs? Or do you feel like
doing them?
Yeah, I don't know. Did you have you came to a realization after doing them, or you just stopped doing them? Or I'm curious.
Oh, well, I think that I was a rare drug addict because when you're really vulnerable to drugs taking over your life is because you don't have anything else that you want to do. And so being high is just like so much better than not being high, that if you don't have something really compelling that you need to be sober for, it's a really easy choice. And I think that my desire to be a writer kind of was this through line where, like, no, I did want to get sober because I was going to go to grad school and I didn't want to embarrass myself. And I, you know, like I had something that was motivating me to build a life. And I didn't have a ton of personal tragedy that I was running from into being high. Does that make sense? So I was kind of like dallying around in the trap, but the trap didn't go off and totally ruin my life. But I had a lot of people that I loved that, you know, it did ruin their life, and they died, and so and I understand very intimately how it happened, and I don't believe that they were bad people, you know, just because they didn't have the internal ballast to right that ship.
Right.
You know.
Have people reached out to you about the book in terms of how you treated the drug addiction?
You know, the nicest one that I kind of could never have, you have no idea who's going to read your book. And sometimes you get written to by all sorts of people. And it was someone who was a director of a methadone clinic who was like, I cried when I read this book because I never see my work presented positively. And thank you for writing about harm reduction in this way. You know, I obviously believe in what I do. That's why I do it. But it is still so culturally maligned.
Yeah.
Any version of a recovery story that doesn't involve kind of like punishment or cleansing of the person is sort of not taken seriously.
Yeah. This was like the first time I'd seen like a fictional take on harm reduction. Maybe the other one was like The Wire's Hamsterdam. I don't know if you...
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I thought that was really cool. I've heard you say that you were really interested in exploring the mechanics of female empowerment. I think the book is very much about Margo trying to figure out how to empower herself in a world where there's a lot of shame, that you mentioned, thrust upon women, sex workers, single moms, all these identifiers that she embodies. Yeah, when you talk about empowerment, what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, I think empowerment is when you take power and ownership and agency in your life. And for me, so when I was thinking about like, well, what are the actual steps? So it's not like I was basing this on some like erudite theory of empowerment. I was like literally just like making it up in my bedroom, right? So I was like, well, I think that there is, first of all, the realization that you have to steer and that you're not just like following instructions. There's like a passivity to being in high school and being that age where you're like, wait, what am I supposed to do next? I'm supposed to go to the guidance counselor, and then what? And then like I go to college, I guess, and like someone tells me like what to do next, and I take the classes I'm supposed to, and then what? Someone will give me a job. Like it's very passive. You're just trying to follow instructions, basically. And so I knew that realizing there weren't instructions for the situation that she was in, and that she would need to kind of not have sources of support that she could use as teacher figures, you know, that her mom would need to have psychological reasons to not just step in and be like, this is how you be a mom. I'm going to help you. We're going to live together. That she would have to be isolated, that she would have to like slowly gain confidence in her own judgment and in her own power. I also think that like we have a lot of weird stuff about money in this culture, and suspicion and fear of money, but also worshiping of money. And so I think for me personally, when I started, you know, working and supporting myself, that those first moments of really being financially independent and self-sufficient and making money to be able to take care of yourself are, I think, really important and empowering. But I think the main thing for Margo is once she has stepped outside of the moral paradigm, the prevailing moral paradigm, and she is judged because she is doing OnlyFans at all, and you can no longer use the good opinions of others as a kind of mirror to make sure you're okay. I mean, all of us wander around anxiously in our heads all the time. Am I okay? Do people like me? Am I okay? And she can't use other people's judgment anymore to decide that for herself. And so she has to kind of come up with her own idea of like, how do I know that I like myself? How do I trust? She has to make up her own moral judgments and compass. And I felt like that her relationship with her father is, and that decision that she makes to help him and believe in him and believe in his ability to fight the addiction, is that moment for her where she's like, this is who I want to be, for myself, because this is what I think is right.
I did find that really inspiring and empowering about the book, because it's interesting, like, now all of the work that we do is like, you get so much feedback on social media immediately, and it is really hard to not take all of those comments and construct them into like, who am I, how am I being seen? And the fact that like she is creating content for those platforms, but has like, the empowerment part is like her knowing her own narrative within that does come from learning it from her dad. I actually found that to be like helpful for me in my work, just like thinking about like, okay, obviously there's going to be like all these different narratives that exist, but you have to like the one that you created for yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think, didn't even Chapel Roan have a thing where she was talking about drag taught her to think about Chapel Roan as like a drag project, as a artificial way that she was interacting with the world, but that it's intimate, it's art.
Yeah.
It's not artificial, doesn't mean fake or lies. But it does mean artificial, and that she didn't, so that she wouldn't confuse that with her real self, you know?
Does that play a role in how you think of yourself as author too?
Sure. I mean, I think you have to. It's very alarming to realize, I mean, authors are introverts. We're writing about imaginary people because real people stress us out, right? And we're not necessarily good at presenting ourselves in a public space. And I remember like being told, oh, you have to get on Twitter, you have to be on social media. And I was like, it was like a game of double dutch that I was never going to know how to jump into. I did not even have the confidence to make a joke. Like I was like, I could not. The most I could do was like retweet things I thought were funny, or like, but I felt really shy. And I think it's been a really slow process of just like being like, well, I did an interview and I think I said a few things and they were dumb, but nothing bad happened. So I guess I'll keep doing that. And you kind of teach yourself that it's safe to be perceived, and like, you know, some people are not going to like you, and like that's a God-given right. And
right.
Like it's fine for some people to not like you. I had a really sweet family friend who, as a gift for my first novel, he took my most like mean good, 1-star Goodreads review and then looked at what her favorite book was on her account and bought me that book as a present. And it was a novel called Tie-Dyed, a quilting mystery. And I suddenly was like, oh my God, that poor woman. She should never have read my book. Of course she hated it. She should hate it. It was not for her.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
God bless her, you know? Like, and so I think that you just, it takes time though to like really genuinely feel okay with like, I'm not for everybody, you know?
But also like the other cool thing about the book is like, I feel like a book is like probably like the oldest medium that's still popular for communication. And I feel like a lot of novels do not treat social media or like technological platforms with any kind of like seriousness, which is the opposite of this book, where it takes it like really seriously. And I thought that was interesting too, is that like you're like giving the new platforms their due. You're like, okay, this is a book, but we still understand that like narrative storytelling happens across other medium and we respect it. And it was like kind of refreshing. It was like not like, oh, people these days are so, you know, don't know how to talk to each other.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is having kids that are the age that my kids are, but I just don't feel, I feel blown away and excited. Well, I mean, I feel dread about the future and technology and like Palantir and, you know, like there's lots of things to be scared of. Mm-hmm. But the wide revilement of YouTube, I do not understand. I love YouTube. I watch so much.
What's your favorite YouTube?
Okay, my favorite YouTube channel is this anthropologist guy, Stefan Milo, who makes these incredibly well-researched videos about like early hominid species and different archaeological finds.
Wow.
And the content is so good and so well done. And he has this like really wonderful skeptical academic sensibility. I love Ants Canada, which is like this like very gentle Canadian man with these like huge ant colonies. And he, like,
I was like not expecting any of these answers.
Yeah, it's like you can travel to anywhere and learn about anything. Like experts in every single thing under the sun are making content of a quality you can't even imagine. Anything that you're nichely interested in, YouTube has content
like
for
ant
you about.
colonies.
I watch endless because the book that I'm writing now has like CIA elements.
Whoa.
And so watching interviews with CIA agents and like all those, there's like a podcast circuit of just government spooks. It's fascinating.
That makes sense. Yeah. I feel like that's a wormhole that you can spend a lot of time in for sure.
Love it.
Okay, I gotta ask you about Fullerton.
Oh yes.
Yes, because I feel like this was the summer Fullerton turned like sexy. Not just obviously like there's your book, but like I don't know if you watched Love Island, and I'm coming clean as like a real reality show junkie. But 2 of the Love Island contestants were from Cal State Fullerton. So like they talked. I just read your book, and then there was like 2 people from Cal State Fullerton.
Fullerton is on the map.
Yeah, it's like what's happening? Yeah. So why set the book in Fullerton?
Okay. Well, so my mom has a friend named Phyllis who lives in Fullerton, and Phyllis is like a classical pianist, and she had a cat named Yum Yum, and we would go and visit Phyllis, you know, several times a year, always, and still to this day, visit Phyllis in Fullerton. And so Fullerton was in a locale that I didn't live in, but knew enough about that it had a vibe and a feel in my mind. And when I was thinking about places to put Margo, I knew that like it felt like a nice place to put her. It felt like a safer place for her to be than if I had put her in Downey. I don't know. It was like my little authorly gift to her was that all this, yes, it was going to be terrifying and hard. She wasn't going to know if she was going to get through it, but she was going to do it in Fullerton, damn it.
And Fullerton is, I've actually never been, but it's like a cute, like, I don't know.
It's
like,
very cute. It's a very cute city. And just so many dentists and tax preparation offices, just so many.
And then also there's a very important scene that happens at an Arby's, at a very specific Arby's. Are you an Arby's girly? What?
Okay,
yeah.
I know. And it disappoints people so much.
They're excited to talk about Arby's with you.
Yeah, and also I feel really bad because like a bunch of women like would cater their book clubs for the book with Arby's and then be like, and Rufi, it was gross. And I'm like, it is a little bit, but also still kind of, some gross things are yummy. I mean, I will eat Arby's. I'm not like a snob about Arby's. But it is not like my weakness. Like if I'm like sick or something, it's not the one, like it's Panda Express is the fast food that my husband, like if I'm like really bummed about something or something, he would bring me Panda.
Then yeah, Arby's was just because you knew that location.
No, it was actually really inconvenient to have them go to that location. It didn't make any sense at all. I just wanted her, I really enjoyed writing her love of food. I remember just the pleasure of eating when I was pregnant and especially breastfeeding, just how hungry I was and how good, like drinking a glass of milk and you're just like, oh, yes, you know? And I wanted her gluttony. I wanted her, like, it's part of her being aliveness, you know? And her exultant vitality. And I also just didn't want her to be a snob. Like, I don't know, sometimes like the comfort food, like the comfort food that you secretly love is not always the food that you like know is better.
Well, as I mentioned at the top, this novel is being turned into an Apple TV series. It already wrapped production. I feel like it's hard enough for something to get bought and then actually made, and this is like happening really fast.
It's really a freakish situation.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me because like I said, like the book is like this book where like people want to talk about it. We get really invested in Margo.
Sure, but plenty of books don't have this happen. This was also just luck. This was everything going right in a weird way, you know.
How has it been to see like your book like being turned into a TV show? I feel like that's such a unique experience.
It totally is, and it's the wildest gift. I mean, first of all, I knew that I didn't want to write it because I feel like a show especially has to kind of depart a little bit from the source material. Like there's a one-to-one relationship between a novel and a movie in their shape, but a show has to have a totally different rhythm, and I felt like I would just keep trying to make it the book. And I wouldn't be able to think outside the box of other ways of doing things. Plus, then it was David E. Kelley offering to write it. And it's like, what, like I'm going to grab the pencil from him, you know? But he's amazing. And watching him Break It and seeing how he turned it into the scripts, was fascinating. It was like a master class. It was like watching someone make what I had done so efficient.
Interesting.
And he just little things like something that was an email, because I was like, well, what would I do? I'm afraid of talking to people. So I would write in an email. So I have her write an email to Mark. And it's much more interesting, especially as a show, to have them run into each other in a parking lot and get into a fight, and who's there, like, somebody else is there, and you have so much more drama. And so I felt like I learned a lot about writing and building compelling scenes just from watching the scripts get written. And then they also really went out of their way to include me and let me have access to all the scripts and take my commentary. And I viewed myself as being there to like help make sure that the wrestling was good, help make sure that the OnlyFans stuff was good. But I also didn't head into it feeling like it needed to be exactly the book. And that made it just really fun to get to work on.
Cool.
And then just surreal. It's just surreal. You can't even believe. Like, I got to take my mom and my mother-in-law on set, and I don't know. It's very exciting. They have so much equipment. They have so many cables.
And it's like the opposite, like sitting alone in a room writing versus like being with all those, like,
we have no stuff. I have no fun stuff. There's no tools of the trade. The most complicated it gets is I buy index cards, and they have just so much stuff and tape, and there's so many people. The amount of people it takes to make a show is crazy.
Is there a little part of you that sees like the character that you had like spent all this time with, like writing, and then seeing it like a person saying the words, and it's like, that's not my person, or like not even like that's not my person, but like, this is so weird?
Yes, there is, but it's a more feeling of like, oh no, people are going to be able to tell this isn't a real show, that it's just my book pretending to be a show.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But it went away like as I kept watching, because I've so far gotten to see like the first few episodes cut together, and
wow, that's how far along it is. That's incredible.
It is wild. They're all like, I don't know. I had only the most rudimentary stereotypes about what Hollywood people would be like, because I had literally like didn't know anyone in that industry. Mm-hmm. And they're all so smart and talented and thoughtful and interesting. I've been just wildly impressed kind of by everybody.
Do you think maybe moving forward you would be interested in writing something?
Well, the social aspect of it is intriguing. The idea of building something with people and being part of a team sounds really incredible, but I am kind of addicted to like writing the novels also. And so it would have to I would have to get an opportunity at the time that I wasn't feverishly working on something. Mm-hmm. And but I would never say no to it. I would be really interested, but it's also not like I'm thinking, oh, now I want to do that instead.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't know. I feel like I could see the Rufi Thorpe cinematic universe down the line. No? Maybe. Okay. Last question, then we do this rapid fire section. What is your next project?
Oh. Well, I don't have a great like one-line pitch for this one yet, so I'm practicing on you.
Okay.
It is set in the world of Little League baseball. It is about a baseball mom who finds herself at the center of a vast government conspiracy.
Whoa.
So it's a book about gossip and fake news and lies and not being able to tell what reality you're in. And it's also kind of like the way in which it's like Margo is it's another like female hero story where she has to like save the world kind of. But I think it's also just like a fantasy that one person's actions could do anything. I mean, we're all like in this like, oh, I guess the world is getting real scary. Don't know exactly what I can do about it. And so this is sort of just like a pure fantasy of like, what if you could? What if one thing you did changed everything?
Plus gossip and
Little League and mom friends and,
That sounds very intriguing. I'm intrigued. I'm excited for that.
Oh, I'm having a lot of fun writing it.
That's cool. As a Southern California writer, I wanted to ask you about your favorite novels set in Southern California.
So, I mean, obviously, when I think about Southern California writers, I think about Joan Didion, and I think Play It As It Lays was put into my hands as an impressionable, 17-year-old, and it is part of what made me a writer. But I also am really I don't know, Kashana Cauley has a book that just came out called The Payback that's set in Glendale at the Glendale Galleria.
Oh my God. Need.
So good. And then here, I'm afraid I'm going to say her name wrong because I only ever see it written down, and I think I've been saying it wrong forever. I used to say it Rika Aoki, but I think it's Rika Aoki, and it's called The Light from Uncommon Stars, and it is set in Southern California, and there's a donut shop reference that has the big donut, like Randy's Donuts, and it is about a violinist that sells her soul to the devil, and there's an alien that runs this donut store, and it's so rad and so fun and so Southern California. I also think too that Walter Mosley is an important element of LA fiction.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I love all those things. I have Play It As It Lays on my bookshelf, and it's the one Didion I have that I haven't read yet. So I need to.
I think I can very much see how that book could rub someone the wrong way, or they could find it melodramatic. But a lot of great short novels are melodramatic. The Great Gatsby is melodramatic as hell.
I love melodrama. So
yeah.
Okay, so we've been asking every single person their favorite place to walk, sit, and lay down in Los Angeles or in Southern California.
Okay.
So, or stand or walk. So the first one is your favorite place to be standing or walking in Southern California.
Well, I might say this is a weird, super sentimental thing, but I might say Irvine Park, where they have that zoo and all the loose peacocks. It's a really sentimental place, and we brought our kids there many times over the years. It's I don't know, it has a really amazing, it's just this massive park, and you can rent those bikes that are a little go-kart, but you pedal. And it is wandering through that is as close to idyllic as I can imagine.
Oh, that's very sweet. Okay, your favorite place to be sitting, and it could be a restaurant. It could be a movie theater.
That really opens things up, because sitting, I was thinking about the rocks on the beach that I grew up in Corona del Mar. And there was especially this rock that if you went at low tide, you could get to it, but otherwise you couldn't, and you can climb up on top of it, and then you can really fully pretend that you're a mermaid. And that was always my favorite spot to sit. But being at really any Mexican restaurant with a bunch of women that you're laughing with, but it doesn't, I don't have a specific, it has to be this restaurant.
Okay, and then last, laying down. So that could be at the beach or under a tree.
Laying down is hard, because now I'm just rethinking my other answers to because the beach is the best place to lay down. I love how at the beach your kids always stop fighting. I think it's too loud for them to properly argue with each other.
Really?
And they just give up, and then everyone there's almost it's just too hard to talk, and everyone becomes it's all the stress leaches out of you at the beach. But I also feel one of my favorite places to sit, if I were maybe I would go back and say that maybe my favorite place to sit is the Hollywood Bowl.
That's a great answer, and we've gotten that answer before because it's such an iconic place to be. I was there last night. It was really fun.
It is. It's a magical and you feel you're part of the city in some deep way.
What's your favorite show you've ever seen at the Hollywood Bowl?
Honestly, so my most concrete memories of the Hollywood Bowl were we had these family friends that had season box tickets to where you can have the picnic.
That's deluxe. That's the hookup you want.
It's so deluxe, and we never could have afforded those tickets. And but so once or twice a year they would bring us, and it was always some classical concert. And so mainly I remember the conductor Dudamel, but I don't have one in particular. But what I do remember is, eating all the cheese and fruit that we brought, and there's a kind of hypnosis to being bored by classical music that is as close as I get to church. Sometimes I think, because we don't take our kids to church, and I'm but they need to be ritualistically bored. It's important. Your brain does weird stuff when you're very, very bored. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I associate with the Hollywood Bowl.
Is being really bored.
Yeah, but
but that being the best way to be
almost
sitting.
Holy way,
I
in
love
that
that
transcendent way.
That's great. Well, Rufi Thorpe, thank you so much for being
Oh my gosh,
here at
thank you
LAist
for having me.
This was
such
great.
a pleasure.
Thank you so much.